So we've come to the end of this month of Hari Smaran, remembering the Lord with all of these very special days. Actually, today is unusual because normally Haridas Thakur's disappearance day and Vishwarup Mahotsav, they're two separate days. So normally tomorrow would be Vishwarup Mahotsav, the day that Vishwarup, he's the elder brother of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Normally his sannyas days is honored tomorrow, but something with the TTs, with the lunar phases, was different. And so it's ended up on the same day, which I haven't seen before actually. So today, actually I feel a little sad because I was thinking we had one more day of this month of Hari Smaran, but it's closing a day early this year. So so today's the last day, and we had Jiva Goswami's. The beginning of the month was beginning with Rupa Goswami and Baladev, Purnima, Janmashtami, but now these last few days the month is concluding with Jiva Goswami's appearance day, which was on Saturday, and Bhakti Vinod Thakur's appearance day, which was yesterday, and then today, which is Haridas Thakur's disappearance day, and combined with Vishwarup Mahotsav. So yeah, very, very, very special time. And yeah, I have to think what I want to say, because actually I wanted to say, I didn't get a chance to say anything on Saturday about Jiva Goswami because we were traveling. And yesterday we started about Bhakti Vinod Thakur, but then there was some the children came in, so we got cut short. And now today's Hari, so it's kind of like you have a beautiful plate of prasadam in front of you, and you don't know which item to start with. You don't know which preparation to start with. But let me say something about Jiva Goswami, who's so important for us. Jiva Goswami's divine appearance day was on Saturday, and he's known as the protector of our sampradaya. He has that very special role, and then in line with Jiva Goswami, persons like Baladevi Jabushan, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and also Srila Sridhar Maharaj, they had that mood of Jiva Goswami to protect, to defend, to stand for the dignity of what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's conception is. And that's not a role that everyone plays. It's a special role for particular, persons, high, qualified persons. And so Jiva Goswami, he's like the head of that group, like the defender in that mood of fighting, because humility may be expressed in different ways. Humility doesn't necessarily mean that we are passive. Humility may mean that we have to take the role of assertion. So and there's one very nice story which Srila Gurudev would always tell about Jiva Goswami, how there was some doubt that was, well, there's a few different stories in this regard, in this subject, but okay, well, one of the stories is there was let's see, what was it? Which Vallabha? Sometimes it's said to be Vallabhacharya, and sometimes it's said to be Gopal Bhatta. Let's say it was Gopal Bhatta. I think I've heard Gurudev tell it both ways, but anyhow, let's say it was Gopal Bhatta Goswami. he visited Rupa Goswami one day, and Jiva Goswami was the nephew of Rupa Goswami, and he was also like a disciple of Rupa Goswami. And so he eventually came and he stayed with Rupa Goswami in Vrindavan, and also under the care of Sanatan also, but primarily Rupa Goswami. And so one day Jiva Goswami was with Rupa, and Gopal Bhatta came to visit, and Sri Rupa Goswami was sharing some poetic composition that he had made. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he pointed out what appeared to him to be some errors in the Sanskrit. And Rupa Goswami was actually there was nothing wrong. Actually, it was perfect. But Rupa Goswami's nature is very humble, always. And so he just humbly accepted what Gopal Bhatta had said, and he made the adjustments. And then Gopal Bhatta left. And meanwhile, Jiva Goswami was there in the room, and he was very upset. and he made some excuse, like he picked up a water pot. Oh, I'm gonna go get some water from the Jamuna or something. And then he went after Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and then he caught up with him. And no, by the way, that supposed correction that you made, I'm not so sure. I think you're in error. And so they had some discussion, and Gopal Bhatta came to understand that he had made a mistake, and so he turned around. He's a genuine Vaishnava. He's not trying to maintain his prestige. So he went to apologize and to correct himself. And he went back to Rupa Goswami and told Rupa Goswami, oh, please excuse me. I realized that I was wrong. What you wrote was perfectly correct. Please change it back. And then they said, oh, by the way, who is that young boy who's staying with you? And oh, that is my nephew, Jiva. Oh, really? He's so brilliant. He's the one who came and pointed out the mistake that I had made. And then Gopal Bhatta left, and Rupa Goswami was not happy. And so then he approached Jiva later, and what is this? You are not fit to remain in Vrindavan. To remain in Vrindavan, you have to be humble. And this is not an example of humility. So he told him to leave. And he told him to go back to Bakla Chandra Dweep, what is now Bangladesh and was East Bengal at the time. And they were in Vrindavan. And so Jiva Goswami, he was very unhappy, but he humbly accepted his guru's order, and he had remembered there was one piece that he had promised one of his friends to write on some point of the Siddhanta. And so he decided just to fast, and he stayed on this bank of the Jamuna working on this piece, this writing, and fasting, not taking anything to eat or drink. And then Sanatana Goswami, he found out about what had happened, and so he came to Rupa Goswami, and he asked Rupa Goswami, what are the main teachings of Mahaprabhu? And Rupa Goswami, he said, you know this one? These 3 points: Jive Doya, Name Ruchi, Vaishnav Seva. Jive Doya, to give mercy to all jivas; Name Ruchi, to taste the name; and Vaishnav Seva, to serve the Vaishnavas. And so there was a play on words here, because Jiva means the Jiva souls, the living souls, but Jiva is also the name of Jiva Goswami. So Jive Doya, to give mercy to all jivas, right? And so then Sanatana Goswami, he said, oh, you're saying to give mercy to all jivas, but there is one jiva on the bank of the Jamuna, and you are not giving your mercy to him. So what is this? And so then Rupa Goswami accepted Jiva Goswami back, and then there was another famous incident with some pundits. A pundit. Oh, it's okay, because Maharaj is there, and I don't want to impose on them. They're talking. There was this, because in India, there is this tradition of debate, like dignified debate between scholars. And so there was this tradition of like traveling far and wide and conquering as many scholars as you could, and then you would have some, you would be honored in a special way. And someone who had conquered many scholars throughout the kingdom, they were known as Digvijay Pandit, which literally means like scholar who conquers in all directions. And so there was this one Digvijay Pandit who was like, like out looking for for qualified persons to debate with in order to establish his own position. And so he came to Vrindavan, and he heard about Rupa and Sanatan. And so he approached Sanatana Goswami and will you debate with me? And Sanatana Goswami was not interested at all. I'm a little busy. I have many things that I'm working on. And then that Pandit said, oh, okay, well, if you won't debate with me, then will you sign this paper saying that you have been defeated by me? And Sanatana Goswami said, sure, no problem. So he signed the paper, and then that Pandit went to Rupa Goswami. Oh, your guru, he signed this paper saying he's been defeated by me. And what about you? Will you debate with me? And Rupa Goswami, no, it's okay. No, I will sign this paper. No, it's okay, no problem. And then this Pandit, he heard about the glories of Jiva Goswami. Like, oh, they have a nephew who's even more scholarly than them. Because actually Jiva Goswami was, Bhakti Thakur described him as the greatest philosopher known to man. He wrote something like 400,000 verses. Like he was a brilliant scholar, philosopher. And so this Pandit heard, but if you haven't defeated their nephew, you haven't really done anything. So then he searched Jiva Goswami, and he approached him. Oh, so your gurus, Rupa and Sanatan, they've signed this paper saying that they've been defeated by me, and what about you? And Jiva Goswami, he said, oh, really? I don't know, but I'm not so sure about it. Let me see that piece of paper. And so then he handed like as proof this piece of paper, and Jiva Goswami took it. What does he do? Rips it up into pieces. and then he chastised that man, and he said, you are so unfortunate because you approached an ocean of nectar. You couldn't get one drop, like who are Rupa and Sanatan? These great devotees of the Lord. They have so much wealth to give. You couldn't get anything from there. All you did was try to establish your own ego. And so then Jiva Goswami proceeded to completely crush that Pandit in debate. So there are actually like some lines of thoughts, the Sahajiyas, they criticize Jiva Goswami. This is one of the points that they make, that he showed this kind of example. But we understand that this is also an expression of humility. In a different way. It is a humility in a different slant, in a different expression. Srila Sridhar Maharaj explains in Golden Volcano of Divine Love, what is humility? He says, that I am humble means that I am the servant of a Vaishnava. This is what humility means. I'm the servant of a Vaishnava. So that may be shown in different ways, but the underlying principle is the same. Like Srila Sridhar Maharaj gives the example of Hanuman setting the city of Lanka on fire. And he says Hanuman's humility is not disturbed when he does that, when he's setting the city on fire. And similarly, Jiva Goswami, he's taking a position of apparent arrogance, but not for his own establishment, but in service to his gurus. So Rupa and Sanatana, they're showing one form of humility, and Jiva Goswami is showing in another way. And this is a very special position that Jiva Goswami has in our sampradaya. And he actually, another point which is unique about Jiva Goswami is that he, normally we are advised not to study, contrary, opposing scriptures, and in particular, there's a text by Shankaracharya, what is it? Sharika Bhashya, something like that. But it's on the Vedanta Sutra. And Shankaracharya is giving this impersonalist interpretation on the Vedanta. And it's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita very clearly, don't read this Bhashya, this commentary, this Shariraka Bhashya, because it says, if you read this, you will be destroyed. Your faith will be destroyed if you will read this. So it's directly advised, don't read this. And Jiva Goswami, he studied that. And he actually spent several years before he went to stay in Vrindavan with Rupa and Sanatan. Like on his way, he spent like 4 or 5 years in Varanasi, which is like the Mayavad capital of India, of the world. And he took that time out to study all the scriptures and even texts which were opposing the Vaishnava conclusions, like a good lawyer. Like for a lawyer to be successful in their argument, they need to be very acquainted with the arguments of their of the opposing side. So like from that stance, Jiva Goswami took that time to carefully study all of these texts. And then because he understood when he goes to Vrindavan, he's going to have some service to do. So he was prepared. And another point that Srila Sridhar Maharaj made about Jiva Goswami is that one of the important contributions that he made is that he very extensively showed how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings and the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam and the Vads.
How are you?
Good, yeah, nice to see you. Welcome.
Nice to see you.
They how they are corroborated throughout the scriptures as a whole. So demonstrate, of course. Faithful persons, they don't need that. Faithful persons don't need to be told. Faithful persons don't need to be told, this is true because it is said in such and such scripture, in such and such Purana or Upanishad or whatever. Faithful persons don't need that. If your mother says this is your father, you simply believe this is your father. So similarly, what Srila Govinda Maharaj told us, what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has told us, what Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur told us, we are more than satisfied with that. We don't need any scriptural citations. But there are those who need such things, and to encourage their faith and to show the dignity of what Mahaprabhu's teachings are. Jiva Goswami did that service and very extensively gave, presenting different points of Siddhanta in the line of pure devotion, in the line of Mahaprabhu's teachings, and then giving so many scriptural citations to support that. And so Srila Sridhar Maharaj mentioned, yes, Rupa and Sanatan, they did that to some extent, a little bit. But Jiva Goswami did that very extensively. And he, in particular, he gave what are known as the 6 Sandarbhas, which are like treatises on different aspects of the conclusions of devotion. There's the Bhakti Sandarbha, and I don't remember the other ones. Well, that's the name. Sat Sandarbha means 6 Sandarbhas. Yeah, there's the Bhakti, so maybe there's the, I can't remember. I've never read them. I mean, this is a lot of work, a lot of text. But anyway, he made that very important contribution. And in dealing with, like we were mentioning yesterday, in the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there were 13 different upper sampradayas identified, 13 different groups misrepresenting Mahaprabhu, And so Jiva Goswami, he's like especially targeting the scholarship section. So like the different types of scholarly deviations, we can say. Logic, and too much addiction to logic, analysis, Mayavad, impersonalist conception, like this. And there's actually one very nice pranam mantra that was written by Baladev Vijayabhushan, glorifying Jiva Goswami. And he describes how you're on this path approaching the divine form of Krishna, but there are all of these obstacles on the way. I can't remember that there were like four so different ideologies which are represented there. But like, for example, the impersonalist conception is compared to a pit in the ground that you fall into and you lose your existence. And I think the path of Nyaya, logic, is compared to like soot and ashes that come and blind you so you can't see clearly. So there's this beautiful divine form of Krishna, and then all of these elements are coming and obscuring that or holding you away from that. And Jiva Goswami is the person who's clearing the path and revealing the beauty of the divine personality of Godhead in the form of Shri Krishna, reality, the beautiful. Atulam Sham, what's that line Gurudev used to quote? Atulam Shama Sundaram. There's this line, I think, in the Upanishads in this regard, Gurudev would quote, beyond that, because generally, the scholarly section and the Vedas as a whole, actually, they're recognizing more the Brahman expression, this hazy, impersonal aspect of the Lord. And then there's this one line, saying, beyond that great white light is that beautiful dark Lord, that beautiful dark Lord, Shama Sundar. So Jiva Goswami, he presented that. And he actually did the first Navadip Dham Mahatmya, Navadip Dham Parikrama. And the book, Navadip Dham Mahatmya, has come out as the revelation of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Because Jiva Goswami, he never really met Mahaprabhu, actually. Maybe he met him in kind of a distant way, like far off or something, but they never properly met. And Jiva Goswami, so Rupa and Sanatan, they'd gone ahead, right? They were older and they'd spent much time with Mahaprabhu, and they settled in Vrindavan. And Jiva Goswami was a boy at the time, and he left home around 12 years old, and he went to Navadvip, but Mahaprabhu had left at that time, had already left. And Gurudev mentioned he received some mercy from Vishnu Priya Devi, Mahaprabhu's wife previously, and also Nityananda Prabhu. So Nityananda Prabhu personally took Jiva Goswami to all of the sites in Navadvip pertaining to Mahaprabhu's Leela. And this is what Navadvip Mahatmya is, right? This is Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, in his divine vision, perceiving that divine current. And in Navadvip Mahatmya, as anyone who's has been through that text, you'll see is describing Nityananda taking Jiva Goswami from place to place and describing the significance connected with all of these holy sites. So that brings us to Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Who is Bhakti Vinod Thakur? Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he gives one example of how, in terms of like perceiving the current of truth and Leela, how Srila Sridhar Maharaj gives this example, if you throw a flower into a stream of water, the stream will carry that water on ahead and it will go, beyond your vision. But if you can keep up with that current, then that flower will remain beside you, right? So in the same way, the Lord's divine Leela, it's not like dead history, and it's not just a imagination concoction either. It's a living current of truth that's always moving in real time. And so those who are like, who can keep up with that speed, who can tune into that frequency, they can perceive that, so that's who Bhakti Vinod Thakur is. And then another point that I wanted to make, which is also connecting Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Jiva Goswami, is, and we didn't get a chance to discuss this yesterday, but Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he composed this wonderful text, the Bhakti Vinod Viraha Dashakam. And this was actually the first composition that Srila Sridhar Maharaj made after he joined the Gaudiya Math. Bhakti Vinod Viraha Dashakam. I mean, Viraha is referring to separation. So these 10 verses in separation of Bhakti Vinod. And if you think about it, it's an interesting point, because you may consider, well, why was the first thing he wrote about his Param Guru, about his grandfather Guru? Normally, you would think the first thing someone would write would be something about their own Guru, right? That would be like the normal way of doing things, or the first thing you would think of, right? But Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he had a particular strategy here. Because he'd heard Srila Saraswati Thakur had mentioned in one talk that if you want to truly please someone, then you have to touch their heart. You have to truly touch their hearts. That's the only way to really please someone. And that really struck Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and he thought about, because he was thinking, how can I please my Guru Maharaj? How can I capture the heart of my Guru Maharaj? And so he was contemplating this point. And then he realized that the best way to go about this would be to glorify his Guru's Guru. Because Srila Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur, he was not interested in his own glories at all. But Saraswati Thakur's everything was Bhakti Vinod. And that's another point. He saw Srimati Radharani within Bhakti Vinod Thakur. He saw the highest vision of Guru within Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj commented how Saraswati Thakur demonstrated how much earnestness one may have for their Guru. How much it is possible to have devotion to Guru. And many of his deities, he added this this Vinod, this like title, this ending, and the deities' names, Vinod, Vinod, in most of the deities that he established. So you know, Saraswati Thakur's everything was Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And so Srila Sridhar Maharaj thought very cleverly, you know, if I really want to capture his attention, then the best thing for me to do is to glorify Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And so that's why he wrote this Bhakti Vinod Virahadashakam. And I mean, there are many, many wonderful points that are made in that composition. And we've heard Gurudev going through it verse by verse and discussing the different points that he appreciated very much. So a number of significant points are there, but the most prominent of these verses, it's I think it's the 8th verse, maybe the 9th verse, and it's extraordinary on every level. The poetry, the Siddhanta, the ontology, and it's describing. First of all, it's telling, it's presenting, it's showing who Bhakti Vinod Thakur is at the highest level, you know, because Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and that one interesting point which Gurudev made once about Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur is that his preaching method was the most broad and accommodating. And we were discussing this yesterday, you know, how Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he wrote many different, he wrote different texts to accommodate persons of different mentalities, different social backgrounds, different cultures, different levels of education, all of these things. He wrote different things in different styles in order to appeal to persons of different backgrounds. So he, you know, he could be extremely broad, you know, catering to the mentality of, you know, even somewhat atheistic persons. We were discussing this with Janardhan Maharaj yesterday, in order to make this, you know, palatable to them, you know, show them how this is applicable to them. You know? So he could be extraordinarily broad. Even some things like this one point we were discussing yesterday with Srila Janardhan Maharaj is how he's in one of his texts, Krishna Samhita, I think it is, he discusses how like the different demons in Krishna Lila can be appreciated in a metaphorical way. You know, like this demon represents this anartha, this vice, and this demon represents that anartha, that vice, and he's presenting that for a very like Western, somewhat atheistic minded audience, you know, who can't just accept Leela, you know, oh, you can understand it in this way, you know, and Gurudev commented about that. And Janardhan Maharaj actually asked Gurudev about that. And I'd also heard that, you know, Gurudev had said, you know, we don't follow that. Like, we don't think like that, actually. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur is doing that in order to appeal to these people, you know. So like how broad, like how far out there is he going in order to give these kinds of persons a chance, you know? So this point Gurudev made once, which I thought was such a wonderful point, that he was extremely broad in his preaching approach, but in his internal bhajan life, you know, his bhajan was the highest bhajan. You know, and his most worshipable deities were Gaur Gadadhar, Shishi Gaur Gadadhar, you know, which is a very fine type of worship, which we don't do because it requires a very, very fine understanding. It's something that must be approached very, very carefully. Is very much subject to misunderstanding. You know? somebody actually asked Gurudev once, why don't we, because like when the temple, our Govinda Kund temple, the water with the temple in the middle was being developed, and it wasn't decided yet what worship would take place in the center of this kund, this water. And somebody suggested to Gurudev, oh, why don't we worship Gaur Gadadhar there? And Gurudev responded, that is the private chamber of bhajan of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. So, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu worshiped together with Gadadhar Pandit. Gadadhar, Mahaprabhu, who's representing Krishna with the heart and halo of Radharani, and Gadadhar Pandit, who represents Radharani having lost her heart, her divine bhav to Krishna, So it is a very, very fine conception. It is Madhura Ras, but also this element of Vipralamba, and they, they are not worshipped in the way that you would worship Radha and Krishna. They are Radha and Krishna, but we're with a different mood. So it must be very carefully approached. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, we don't need to go into that right now, actually, but since I brought it up. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he gave a very helpful analogy, like if a husband is on the altar doing puja, he's worshiping his Lord, and his wife is by his side assisting him. Their amorous relationship is not being highlighted in that moment. There's a very particular mood there, and that something like that is what the relationship between Shri Gaur Gadadhar. So anyway, I won't go into that because I'm not qualified, but I'm just saying, giving some idea, this is a very fine type of worship. And that was they are the chosen deities of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He worshipped them in Gojumadweep, in his bhajan Swananda Sukara Kunj in Gojumadweep. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, extremely broad in his approach to the public, to the masses, but very, very refined in his internal worship, very fine, very exclusive in his internal world. And so going back to the point here, this verse that Srila Sridhar Maharaj composed, Srila Sridhar Maharaj is describing here what is the position of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the highest level, and what he can give. What is his capacity to give? And what is that? That is Radha Dasyam, the service of Srimati Radharani. He has that kind of potency. And in the course of these verses, he's establishing like what so many great Vaishnava Charjas, Ramanuja, Madhvacharya, they had so much, they had a great contribution to make, but what Bhaktivinoda Thakur can give is beyond that even. And ultimately, his greatest gift is Radha Dasyam. This is what he can give, And so this verse, it's describing this is who Bhaktivinoda Thakur is, and then the verse is so extraordinary. The verse is also describing all of the different important charges in our line, beginning with Mahaprabhu, since the time of Mahaprabhu, and identifying, locating what is their contribution in relation to the distribution of this gift of Radha Dasyam. So, Shri Gauranumatam, Srupa Viditam, Rupa Grajainajitam, Rupa Jai Pariveshitam, Raghuganer Swaditam Sevitam, Jiva Gyer Abhirakshitam, Shuka Shiva Brahmadi Samanitam, Shri Radha Pada Sevanamritam Ahota Datam Isho So what Mahaprabhu came to give And what was known fully by Sarup Damodar, what was adored by Sanatan, distributed by Rupa, tasted by Raghunath, and protected by Jiva. Jiva Dyer Abhirakshitam. Jiva and his party. Jiva Adi. So that means others in there too, in that group. Baladevi Jabushan. Maybe who else is mentioned? I don't remember. But anyway, Jiva Dyer Abhirakshitam. This is the special place. This is how Jiva Goswami has been identified. He is the protector, or as Rakshak, right? This is also the title of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, given by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So protected by Jiva Goswami, Shuka, Shiva, Brahma, Shukadev Goswami, Shiva, no, what is it? Jiva Dyer Abhirakshitam, Shuka, is Shiva mentioned? Maybe Shiva's mentioned there. Shuka, Shiva, and Brahma. Samanita means they are giving their respects to this from a distance. They're not directly in. How high is this divine substance? Even such high personages, they cannot come directly in touch. They're giving their respects to this from a distance. And what is that? Shiradha pada sevanamrita mahota datam isho bhavan. The nectarian divine service of the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani. That you can give. Srila Sridhar Maharaj is addressing Bhakti Thakur. You can give that. So what is your position? And this verse is so perfect that Srila Saraswati Thakur himself, he commented, like we hear he's reading this composition and appreciating different points. And after reading that verse, Srila Saraswati Thakur's comment was, I am satisfied that after I leave, one person will remain behind who understands what I came here for, what my mission is. So, that we can also appreciate that whole line, and, coming to Srila Sridhar Maharaj, coming to our Gurudev, and we have some connection with that, So it's just extraordinary, that composition. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Jiva Goswami, and today's Haridas Thakur will say a little bit about Srila Haridas Thakur. He is known as the Namacharya. He is the first distributor of the holy name. Actually, this is a very special position that Srila Haridas Thakur has. Before Mahaprabhu, even before Mahaprabhu appeared, Haridas Thakur, he was here first, and he was, and then there are many beautiful. We don't have time now, but there are many beautiful pastimes, described in connection, very instructive and exemplary pastimes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, describing, different incidents in the life of Haridas Thakur surrounding his distribution of the holy name before Mahaprabhu appeared. So he has that special dignity, the Sampradaya. And Mahaprabhu gave him so much honor. And of course, it's interesting and significant that he appeared in a Muslim family. And, so it's like demonstrating Mahaprabhu really did not care about anyone's social status. There was no consideration of that. And after Mahaprabhu began his his Sankirtan movement, then Haridas and Nityananda Prabhu, they were like his two generals, you know. And we also hear some pastimes when they were Mahaprabhu, it's described in, I think in Chaitanya Bhagavat, you know, how Mahaprabhu called them to him and one day, and he gave them these instructions, you know, Prati Gore Gore Dviya, Prati Gore Gore Giya, Koroe Bhiksha, you know, Koro Krishna, Bhaja Krishna, Koro Krishna Shiksha, this famous, you know, instruction. Go out. This is, you know, this is the Krishna consciousness movement today also, like go, or what it should be, what we want it to be. Go out to, this is the mood at least. You know, go out, knock on every door, go to every door, every home, every person, tell them about Krishna, you know, learn about Krishna, tell others about Krishna, worship Krishna, serve Krishna. So Mahaprabhu gave these instructions to Haridas and Nityananda, and they would go out together spreading this message. And we hear some of those pastimes, like one of the most prominent ones is Jagai and Madai, you know, that was a part of the, you know, the outreach of Nityananda and Haridas Thakur. And another thing about Haridas Thakur is he was very good friends with Advaita Charja. They were very good friends. And there's one incident when, and Haridas stayed with him for some time. And that's also an interesting contrast because Advaita Charja, he had a very prestigious position amongst not only the Vaishnavas, but also within the general society, because he was a highly, you know, qualified Brahmin. And so he was the head of the Vaishnavas in the Navadvip, the Nadia area, but he also was very much respected amongst the, you know, the Brahminical section. And then Haridas Thakur, he's like, you know, considered an outcast by the general Hindu society because of his Muslim connections. So their friendship, it was something striking. And there's one famous incident which is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita and maybe also Chaitanya Bhagavat, how once Advaita Charja, he was holding some rites for some ancestors, you know, Shraddha, holding some Shraddha ceremony. And as a part of that, there's this like plate of prasad, which is meant to be offered to the guest of honor, like the most honored dignitary present in the assembly. And so one time Advaita Charja, he was conducting one of these rites, and he had many respectable guests there, many Brahmins were there. And Haridas Thakur, he's like out hiding in the bushes, which he, you know, he would often do. Like he would never come and sit with the Vaishnavas. You know, he always considered that he was unfit, and he was very, very humble in that regard. And the, you know, Mahaprabhu and the Vaishnavas would always try and bring him closer, and he would never accept. And so anyhow, on this occasion, Haridas was nearby, like in some bushes, and then this plate, it's called the Shraddha Patra. It was ready to be given to the guest of the highest honor, and Advaita Charja, he walked past all these Brahmins, and he gave it to Haridas Thakur. And Haridas Thakur at first, you know, he was very, very shy and refusing. Oh, I cannot take this. And he was partly concerned, like if Advaita Charja just ignored all of the customs of society, then it would put him in a difficult position, put Advaita Charja in a difficult position. You know, he's a renegade Brahmin or whatever. And so he expressed some concern, and Advaita said, oh, millions of Brahmins will be satisfied by you taking this plate. And he also told him something like, you know, don't worry about me, you know, I can take care of everything. And Advaita was actually fine because he was so respected, you know, everyone just accepted whatever he did. And then later, of course, Haridas, and there's also a very nice description of Haridas and Advaita when at the time when Mahaprabhu is appearing, they're dancing, because Mahaprabhu he appears at the time of lunar eclipse, right? And the holy name is reverberating in all directions, and Haridas and Advaita Acharya, they're together. And actually it's also mentioned, it's not often remembered, but I'm remembering now that normally we only think of Advaita Acharya like he called for Mahaprabhu's appearance, right? But actually Haridas also participated in that. And then they were together at the moment when Mahaprabhu actually appeared, and I don't remember which was which, but one of them mentioned it mentions how, or one of them says how I see that you are dancing. Maybe Advaita was dancing and Haridas is dancing in his heart, we're both dancing, and something extraordinary must have just happened, and this is the moment that Mahaprabhu is appearing. And so then later, then Mahaprabhu later, he takes sannyas, and there's this 12-day festival at the home of Advaita Acharya. And at the conclusion, Shachi Mata decides, Mahaprabhu should stay in Puri, in Jagannath Puri, because there's this link between Puri and Navadvip. It's like a common route. And so the society will stay in Puri. But the thing about Puri was one of the few places that was not under the Muslim rule. It remained independent. It was like there were maybe 2 or 3 places in the whole of India like that, and Puri was one of them. And so Haridas was a little concerned, how am I going to be able to visit you there? The general Hindu society, they're very prejudiced against me, and I'm not going to be welcome in Puri. And so he expresses some concern to Mahaprabhu, what am I going to do? And Mahaprabhu says, don't worry, I will arrange a place for you, especially. And Mahaprabhu did that. Mahaprabhu, he especially arranged this place, Siddha Bakul is called, right? Siddha Bakul. And so Haridas would stay there when he was there, and also Rup and Sanatan. And it wasn't like a particular location where, they wouldn't be in the way of the pandas and the priests of the temple and the pilgrims who were going to the Jagannath temple. It was in a particular location where it wouldn't create any friction with the Hindu society. And so Haridas would stay there. And then Jai. And so Haridas would stay there, and every morning Mahaprabhu would come to visit Haridas Thakur on his way. He would go to bathe in the ocean. Mahaprabhu would go to the morning arati at the Jagannath temple, and then on his way for his morning bath in the ocean, he would stop to visit Haridas Thakur. So they would meet every day. And then we heard this morning, Janardhan Maharaj, he went through the whole chapter. It is Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya Leela, chapter 11, I think, describes the passing of Haridas Thakur. And it's a very beautiful, very touching description by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And this is one of the significant points which is often remembered about Haridas, that he had this special mercy to leave the world before Mahaprabhu, because that is very painful. That is very painful. And you know, within our group, we have, you know, Vaishnavas like Shripad Rishabdev Prabhu, Shripad Siddhanti Maharaj. They had this mercy. There was this parallel that was drawn between the way that they left the world and the way that Haridas Thakur left the world. You know. But so Haridas Thakur, he actually requested this of Mahaprabhu, you know, and he said, and it's so poignant, you know, so touching to the heart, striking. Mahaprabhu, Haridas, he particularly requests this of Mahaprabhu. You know, I've seen many pastimes of yours in this world. I've seen many leelas. He says, you know, I can understand that now you are going to begin winding up your leela. This is the Antya leela, right? This is the final section of Mahaprabhu's pastimes. And it's when Mahaprabhu is about to start withdrawing into his inner world and his inner purpose for having descended. And so Haridas Thakur says, you know, I can recognize you're about to begin withdrawing from this world. And I've seen many wonderful leelas of yours in this world, but this leela, he says, I don't want to see that leela. No, that is too heavy for me to bear. So he makes that special request to Mahaprabhu. And at first Mahaprabhu's, you know, opposing him gently, and how can I continue without you in this world? You know, if you leave me, then I will suffer in your separation. And then Haridas is saying, oh, my Lord, don't play with me like this, you know. And he says, I'm just an insect. I'm like if an insect leaves this world, what difference does it make? And then Mahaprabhu finally says, oh, okay, well, Krishna, he will fulfill your desire, like that. You know, Krishna will fulfill your desire. And then the next day, Mahaprabhu comes with a group of his devotees, a Sankirtan party, and Mahaprabhu asks to Haridas, like he's actually saying, like, so what's your final decision? You know, but the way he says it, it's very charming. And also, you know, some pain there. He says, oh, Haridas, tell me, what is the news? You know, what have you decided? What is the news? And Haridas responds, oh, my Lord, whatever mercy you may bestow upon me, you know. So in other words, you know what I want. If you please will give that to me, then I will be happy, you know. And then Mahaprabhu starts this Maha Sankirtan with all the devotees there. And Mahaprabhu also, maybe before that or maybe after, I don't remember, but it mentions as if he had 5 mouths. He's glorifying Haridas Thakur. And he leaves. It mentions holding Mahaprabhu's feet on his chest and his eyes like 2 bumblebees, like drinking in the beauty and the nectar of Mahaprabhu's face. He leaves like that and chanting Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, which is very significant, and Gurudev pointed it out, and Maharaj also mentioned it this morning. You know, his whole life, Haridas Thakur was chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, but in his last moments, he chanted Shri Krishna Chaitanya, you know, which is, you know, indicating his devotion for Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and also indicating that, as Gurudev pointed out, the non-difference of Shri Radha Krishna, you know, who are glorified in the Maha Mantra, and Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, their non-different position. And so in this way, he left the world. And then Mahaprabhu carried him in his arms, dancing, and then personally carried, no, then they had a palanquin, some type of palanquin. They carried him to the ocean. They bathed his divine form in the ocean. And Mahaprabhu announced, because the ocean is already generally considered to be a tirtha, to be a holy place, because all the holy rivers, they merge in the ocean. But then after bathing the body of Haridas in that ocean, then Mahaprabhu said, now this has become a Maha Tirtha. No, this is a Maha holy place, because the divine form of Haridas has bathed in these waters. And then they dig a, samadhi. Mahaprabhu personally participating in that. They place his divine form there in the ground, in the sand maybe. And then they go to the central area in the town, and Mahaprabhu personally begins approaching the shopkeepers for begging for prasad, because he wants to hold a festival in honor of Haridas Thakur. And so Mahaprabhu personally is begging, going from shop to shop, asking them for prasad to honor the passing of Haridas. And then finally Sri Damodar tells him, oh, it's okay, we'll take care of this. and then they hold this, wonderful prasadam distribution in honor of Haridas Thakur. And there's this famous line there, Haridas Achilo Prithivir Shiromani, saying that Haridas Thakur, he was the crown jewel on this world, and with, I think it's Mahaprabhu's words himself. And now that he's not here, it doesn't translate very well into English actually, but saying now the world is jewelless, the world has lost its crown jewel, essentially saying, the world has lost its crown jewel with the passing of Srila Haridas Thakur. And it mentions there also how Mahaprabhu, he concluded his day with these mixed feelings of joy and sadness, joy in remembering the glories of Haridas, and sadness and separate. And he also, there's another line there where he says, like, Krishna blessed me by giving me the association of Haridas Thakur, but Krishna is also independent in his desires, and now he's broken that association. So this is another point about this Leela, the passing of Haridas Thakur, is that it's actually representative of the mood and the Siddhanta that is surrounding the departure of all great Vaishnavas. And so often, actually, this chapter in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's recited at the samadhi of a great Vaishnava, in the Gaudiya Vaishnava line. It is commonly done, because everything that's described, like the Lord's feeling, Mahaprabhu's feelings on the departure of his beloved devotee, the appreciating the position of the devotee. These are things that are, applicable in the case of the departure of all great Vaishnavas. So there's this universality about the passing of Haridas Thakur also. And then there's also some, there's some solace there actually, when we are contemplating the loss of a great Vaishnava, in hearing this description, these feelings, there's some solace in hearing that. And you see how much love the Lord has for his devotees, like how Mahaprabhu personally, takes care of every detail of Haridas Thakur's, passing and samadhi and the subsequent Utsav festival. Mahaprabhu is personally leading that and participating in that. So how much love and care the Lord has for his devotees, that's seen in Haridas Thakur, but it's also representing the Vaishnavas as a whole. So Yeah. Oh, two places. She was here a minute ago. We're finished now. So Haridas Thakur and Vishru Mahotsav also, the day that Vishwarup, he was supposed to get married. He's Mahaprabhu's older brother, and Mahaprabhu was a boy at the time, but he was supposed to get married. His parents had arranged something, but when he heard that, Vishwarup left. He went to South India and he took sannyas, and I can't remember, Shankararanya maybe was his sannyas name. That's also honored today. I'm going to stop there. Does anyone want to? Oh, Kunti's joined us. And also we have Nama Priya with us this week, and Suvasini Didi, Seva Rupa Didi, Ajita Krishna Prabhu, they've all joined us. And there were a few others who joined, but they've gone now. Oh, this is Seva Rupa in South Africa. The last few weeks we had Seva Rupa in Mexico. That's funny, the two of you haven't joined at the same time. But we have had the two Govindanandinis joining us. But now one of them is gone. We have Brazilian Govindanandini. Yeah. Well, very happy we can remember all of these.
And on Facebook, we have Tapanandini.
Tapanandini in Mexico. Okay, wow. Beautiful.
And Shriti Kana Chakrabarti.
Okay.
I'm not sure where.
Okay. Well, does anyone want to add anything or comment or anything at all? Suvasini Didi, anything you want to share?
Such a beautiful glorification you gave. Very, very beautiful. Very nice. I don't know whether you mentioned this probably in the beginning. It's the Jiva Goswami, the Srila Guru Maharaj quotes this often, like of the definition of Bhagavan, right? Bhajaniya Sarva Sat Guna Visishta. Yeah, that is a beautiful definition.
Oh, you please, no, I didn't discuss that. You please explain.
No, it's usually, we know Bhagavan, like, it's Aishwarya, it's everything, all fame, beauty, all knowledge, all, this, all renunciation. But Jiva Goswami has given this very beautiful definition of Bhagavan. It's like Srila Guru Maharaj explains that, right? So whoever is Bhajaniya Guna Visishta, like, whoever comes in touch with that, they cannot but resist serving him. That is the definition he's given. So that was very, very, I always remember that definition, Bhagavan, for Jiva Goswami, whenever I remember that. So, yeah.
Very nice, Didi. Kunti's sending a heart. Okay, well, Chinmoy Prabhu, anything you want to add? Or?
I'm just wondering, because you mentioned the worship of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the Gaur Vedanta. And is that related to his desire to spend his last days in Kurukshetra, his expressed idea it seems like he wants to serve where there's the greatest necessity. It seems like deities also, he's serving the deities.
It may be. I can't comment, okay, but maybe. Yeah. Because in the mood of Vipralamba, there's the highest necessity of service. So maybe, yeah. I mean, Chinmoy Prabhu, he's mentioning one nice point here. He's referencing this point we heard from Srila Sridhar Maharaj and Gurudev, how Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he expressed this aspiration to spend his final days in Kurukshetra. And the reason for, and you know, that you hear that, oh, that's funny. We always hear about Vrindavan or Navadvip. Why Kurukshetra all of a sudden? And his feeling, his thinking was that, you know, service is valuable according to necessity. And at Kurukshetra, when Krishna meets with the Brajabasis, and especially the Braja Gopis, you know, they've been living over 100 years in separation from Krishna, and they finally meet. But instead of there being some relief, their separation it reaches its acme point because they are with Krishna, but they're not with Krishna at the same time. This is a different Krishna. This is not their beloved Vrindavan, Gopavesh, Venukar, Navakishore, Natadwar, you know, this their beautiful cowherd boyfriend with the flute, with the cows, on the banks of the Jamuna. This is a royal prince, and it's a completely different mood. So instead of relief, their separation is intensified. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, this is his line of thought, you know, that any small service that can be rendered there to give some assistance to the Braja Gopis in this difficult moment, that is worth, that is so much, worth so much more, you know. So that was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's expression. I don't know where that's coming from.
What's that?
Well, okay, maybe we'll stop there for today. Very happy to be here with all of you, and look forward to next week.
Jai Vishakha Devi Dasi ki jai.
Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Jai Shri Jiva Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. Shri Vishwarup ki jai. Jai Chinmoy Dev ki jai. Subhasini Ji ki jai. All the assembled devotees ki jai. Shishiku Guranga Yadari Kadiri Hari Ju ki jai. Jai Shri Bhakti Pavan Janardam Jai. Jai Gaur Premanande. Chintamani says, who are these rude people trying to call you when they're not in this? They're not clued in. I'm the center of the universe, and my Zoom meeting is the center of the universe. How do they not know this? Okay, see you all next time.
Thank you, Didi. Beautiful. Thank you.
Dandavad, Stevie. Bye-bye.
Dandavad. Dandavad Ajita Prabhu. Dandavad.